Good evening and welcome to another live stream. Before we start, pool sessions, just to let you know, pool sessions are up and running and you're welcome to join us. The details are on Facebook. Obviously with the COVID restrictions we have to limit numbers, so we're asking members and newbies, everybody basically, to book a place, and you can book a place through Eventbrite and come along to the pool sessions. They're kind of opening up this week, so hopefully see you there. Last week I was doing some Q&A, and a question came up about the last breath before a dive, and I mentioned candle blows, and I said, and I remember saying, that I would go through candle blows tonight and explain what they are and why we do them. Now, I've been diving now for over 20 years, freediving for over 20 years, and the things that we were doing 20 years ago were different, shall we say. And as people have thought about what we do and why we do them, things change. And one of the things that quite early on, so it must have been 18 years ago, I started thinking about the last breath before we dive, or the last breaths, should I say, and started introducing a concept of candle blows before the dive, and at the end of the dive, a concept of recovery breaths. Now, the recovery breaths are super easy. We call them sigh breaths, so a big inhalation and then a sigh. And weirdly enough, one by one, the major agencies have started bringing in their idea of recovery breaths, which work out exactly the same as our recovery breaths. So big inhalation, concentrating on the inhalation, and then just gently sighing the air out. That's why I call them sigh breaths. But the last breaths before we dive, we have what we call them candle blows, and they're fairly important in the NoTanx system. And as I say, we've been doing them for like 18 years now, and they've developed slightly, but the concept and the principles are still the same, and the concept and the principles still are based on not a problem particularly, but solving a problem kind of thing, and the physiology, the human physiology, and how it works. So tonight I'm going to go through candle blows and why we do them. Okay. Now, and at the end I'll go through a few comments that I've had over the years, and kind of give the physiological reasons why the questions or the comments we've had either hold water or don't hold water. Okay, so let's start with why do we do candle blows? Oh no, let's start with what candle blows are. So before we hold our breath, before we do our breath hold, we do 3 candle blows, and that's a deep-ish inhalation and then a forced exhalation. Okay? And it's like this. Okay? Maybe that's a bit exaggerated for the sound and the video, but should be something in that sort of order. We do 3 of them, and they are very diaphragmatic, not chest, they're very diaphragmatic. So before a dive, they would sound like this. Then we take the last breath in and do our dive. Okay, so why do candle blows? Well, there are 6 or 7 reasons why, depending on which of our versions of the literature over the years that we've put out. But it was, we started with 6, then we split it into 7, and then 2 of them we kind of put back into one kind of thing. But it doesn't matter. Tonight I'm going to go through the 6 reasons. So there's 6 really important reasons why we do the candle blows before a dive, before every single dive. So number one is communication. Now, I've seen people's attitudes towards this change over the years, and we you know, other people have kind of come up with their own ideas for this, and it's absolutely fine. It's telling the people around me that I'm about to dive. So I am literally communicating to the people around me that I'm going to dive. Now, I have seen other people you know, teach that they're hanging on a line, or you know, at the dive site or wherever you are, and you're telling your buddy you're about to dive. They may not be right next to you, because, you know, it's not always a competition style dive. They might be a little way off, and I want to tell them to dive. Now, I could go, hey Bob, I'm just about to dive, and then dive. But this breaks communication, breaks concentration, and my breathe up is interrupted. And if we're in a situation where I'm going to do a dive, I'd kind of hope that my buddy was expecting me to tell them that. So realistically, if we could have a non-verbal communication that actually pinpoints the time we're going to dive, this is going to be much more efficient. And I'm not going to say, hey Bob, can you order us a pizza? I'm going to be saying, I'm about to dive. That's literally the only thing I'm going to be telling them. Apart from, I'm not going to dive, in which case, you know, I've got all the time in the world. I can, you know, speak because I'm not about to dive. So it's a good non-verbal communication to tell everybody, and particularly my buddy, that I'm about to dive. Now, if you're on a NoTanx trip, especially in the pools, you know, the deep pools, Nemo and Dive for Life, which we go to when we're allowed, you'll see a candle blow. You know, somebody does candle blows, and all the instructors will just look over, just glance over. Who's their buddy? Okay, and this is exactly the reason why we do this. You know, everybody knows that what it means, and of course, if you're not ready for them to dive, you can just put your hand on your shoulder and say, "Hang on a sec, there's already somebody down," or "Who's your buddy?" or whatever. But it's, you know, really simple, non-verbal communication. Okay. The second one is neurological programming. Now, sometimes I explain it. We're telling everybody we're about to dive, and second, we're telling ourselves we're about to dive. Now, it's a neurological hook, a positive conditional hook. You can call it a positive conditional hook, which is a conditioning. It's a way that I'm I am telling my body that I am about to dive. Right? I am, and I do this every single time I dive. I blow the candles, so my body is expecting that I'm going to dive after it. Okay? So widely accepted as a behaviorist system attributed to Pavlov, Pavlov's dog, you might have heard. He won the Nobel Peace Prize. No, the Nobel Prize for in 1904, where he was working with dogs, and he managed to get them conditioned that they responded to a stimulus that's nothing to do with the result. In other words, we can teach our body to respond to candle blows and get it to react as if we're going to dive. So the dive responses, we can actually trigger them before the dive, such as bradycardia, you know, heart rate lowering, blood shift, and they can be trained as well as blood shift, and these can be trained as a response to the candle blows. This is before we've even done the dive. Okay, so this is you know, really quite useful and powerful system we have. And I'm going to bring in safety at this point. That if you haven't got 10 minutes to prepare for a dive, or 5 minutes, or even in some cases 2 minutes to prepare for a dive, you know, there's a situation where you have to do a safety dive, and then this one's come up more than once. If you're a stunt person, jumping out of a window or setting yourself alight or something for a stunt, you may not have 2 minutes of breathe up, but you have pretty much always got 5 seconds to do the candle blows, and so you can trigger the dive reflexes, the dive responses, should I say, within 5 seconds. Not brilliantly. It would be better to have a 2 minute breathe up, or a 30-second breathe up, but you haven't in this situation. Bang! You can use the candle blows, and you can use it, and the responses will kick in. It's worth having. Okay. So positive conditional hook. Now, the next one, clear out stale air. So if you have been laying on your back, not necessarily in your front because you'd have to have a snorkel, and there's issues with snorkels, but for us, laying on your back or upright, and you've been slowing your breathing down, slowing down. So your last breath might take, a minute, to breathe in, or even 30 seconds. Let's call it to 30 seconds. You breathing in and then extending that exhalation. If at the bottom of that exhalation you would take your last breath before a dive, some of the air has stayed in your lungs after that long exhalation. The residual volume, a quarter, 25% of the air you can't get rid of. So that air has been in your lungs, being used by the body for like 30 seconds. Or in some cases a minute. If your warm-up breaths take a minute, then some of that air has been in your body being used, and not an insignificant amount, a quarter of the air in your lungs has already done a 1 minute breath hold because it's been in there. So we need to clear that out. And so 3 hard breaths before a dive are going to clear out that quarter of a lung full of air before the dive. Now people say, well, how does that do that? It's a residual volume. You're never going to be able to clear it out. And I give the example of if you've got a bottle of water and you put Ribena or some sort of juice in it, and you pour 3/4 of it out. There's still Ribena in the bottom, and then fill it up to the top, and then squeeze out 3/4 again. Fill it up to the top, and then squeeze it out. Even though you're not emptying the bottle every time, okay, you're only taking out half or 3/4, even half. It will dilute that juice you got in the bottom of the bottle 3 times. You've diluted it a lot. Okay? The same stuff that happens with your lungs. Okay, stale air, and the last quarter of your lung full is stale air, and you breathe out strongly, vigorously, like squeezing the bottles of juice. Force it out. Breathe in. Force it out. These are quite active breaths, and you're going to stir it up and clear out the stale air that's been in there. Okay, so that's number 3. Now number 4 is where people get a little bit confused here, and I've got a PDF. So if you want a PDF, I've got a PDF you can have that's got some it's got some references to the physiology that we use, or that backs this up. Now, the alveoli, the last little kind of balls, there's a cat. The ball or sacs, air sacs in the lungs, the last place that the air that goes into the lungs stays. It has actually got generally a CO2 level of 5%. Okay, so, and this is a healthy range, something in the order of 5%, which is quite high compared to the amount of air, the amount of CO2 that's in most of the lungs, but that's kind of where it is. But if you slow your breathing down, this alveoli CO2 levels can go up to 6.5%, possibly 7%. Now, this is really quite high, but you want to get it down to the 5% to allow your body to be working normally. So a few deep, forceful breaths are gonna flush out the CO2 in the lungs and reduce the alveoli CO2 level back to 5%, which is a normal level for the lungs. Okay. Now, people have in the past commented or suggested that the candle blows are hyperventilation. They are not. They physically cannot be hyperventilation, because hyperventilation is lowering the CO2 levels in the blood, not in the lungs, but in the blood. Okay. Now, to reduce the CO2 levels in the blood, you've got to reduce the CO2 levels in the alveoli, so lower than 5%, and keep them low. Because of course, if you lower it, effectively the carbon dioxide in the blood will be drawn out into the alveoli. So if you lower the alveolic CO2 levels to say 4%, within a second or so, the CO2 from the blood will be drawn across and they go up at 5%. So you have to keep blowing and huffing and puffing. It takes something like 20-30 seconds to actively lower so 20-30 seconds of huffing and puffing to lower the carbon dioxide levels in the blood. And that is what hyperventilation is. So within 3 breaths, you cannot do it. You may be able to drop the CO2 levels in the alveoli, but even if you drop them, low in the alveoli, low for normal, low for normal, in 3 breaths, it's not going to lower the CO2 levels in the blood. It physically can't do it. So we do want to lower the CO2 levels in the alveoli, only back to what they would normally be at 5%, because they've gone up during long breath holds, long breaths. Okay. So that's number 4. Okay, number 5. Now, number 5 and number 6 are interesting. They're a little bit more technical to describe, and almost counterintuitive to each other, but we'll go through. So, assisted circulation. Okay, so the heart pumps blood around the body, and if you need more blood because you're going to do exercise, the heart rate goes up to pump more blood around. And we know as freedivers, we're trying to lower our heart rate before a dive. If we actively squeeze the lungs, okay, there's a lot of blood in the lungs, around the lungs. And if we squeeze them, this is going to assist the circulation of blood, assist the circulation of oxygenated blood away from the lungs. It's actually back to the heart and then around the body. So it may only be a small effect, but it will stop the heart having to work quite as hard. okay? Because we're assisting the circulation of blood. It might be a small effect, but it's worth noting that that's going to happen. Okay? So it keeps the heart rate low. Or rather, means the heart doesn't have to work quite as hard. And the last one, the candle blows actually raise the heart rate. Now, I've just said it helps lower it, but it does. It helps lower it because the heart doesn't have to work as hard. But if you've been laying, calmly breathing, 5 in, 10 out, you know, super long, soft breaths, really controlled, okay, your heart rate is super low. And then whatever you do, at that point when your heart rate is low, whatever you do activity-wise, it's going to go up. Now, you've got two choices. You either do a duck dive, which raises the heart rate because the body goes, all right, you need oxygen, demands oxygen, and therefore the heart rate goes up. Or we can artificially raise the heart rate in preparation for the dive. So just before the dive, we can raise the heart rate. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's a graph I drew out earlier today. So in the breathe up section, say the heart rate's about, and these numbers are only general numbers, rough numbers, about 40 beats per minute, for sake of argument, right, in the breathe up section. Then, as we do the duck dive, the heart is requested. Okay, so you get yourself in a position and your body requests oxygen and the heart rate goes up. And the body, say in this instance, it looks like it goes up to, you know, maybe 80 beats per minute. You know, for sake of argument, it goes up. But then the body doesn't allow the heart rate to drop very quickly afterwards because it's waiting. It's like, well, what else do you want me to do? You've asked for more oxygen. I've given you. I've raised the heart rate. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. So it does drop off, but not very quickly. Now, if you increase the heart rate before the duck dive artificially, like this red line here, this is when you do candle blows. You blow the candles, heart rate goes high. It goes higher than you need, and then starts dropping down quicker because the body doesn't need it. And it kind of masks that demand for oxygen that increases the heart rate. And we've done this with heart rate monitors where people have done candle blows, heart rate goes up and it spikes quite high and it just drops straight off. Okay. Usually even more, well, sometimes more dramatically than this graph shows. Okay. So with candle blows it goes higher and then drops down lower. Because we're preempting the fact that we're gonna do a dive, we're gonna do a duck dive or pull on a rope or whatever we're gonna do. We preempt it. The heart rate goes up too high, higher than it needs, and then drops down. And at the same point, it's got the same heart rate, the same amount of oxygenation, but then it can drop down. Okay, so that is the 6 reasons why at NoTanx we teach the candle blows before every dive. Now, interesting things. I teach freediving, you know, a lot. Usually, I'm pretty much 5 times a week. I'm teaching freediving, 5 nights a week, and I will be teaching people candle blows. I'll be demonstrating the candle blows. And the second reason, the neurological programming doesn't work with me, because I do so many candle blows without following up with a dive. I do it, so I mean, already tonight I've done 2 sets of candle blows, 3 sets of candle blows already, and not dived. So it doesn't work. I've killed the conditioning that I had for candle blows. So what have I done? How do I cope? Well, I have pretty much exactly the same candle blows, but with a slight tweak on it. ever so slight. And if you hadn't seen this video, you wouldn't notice a difference between my candle blows and other people's candle blows. But there is a difference. And I only use that candle blows, my tweaked MIG candle blows, when I'm going to dive. And my body responds to it. I can feel my heart rate dropping, my blood pressure dropping. I can feel my brain starts focusing. I'm in the zone if I do my candle blows as opposed to anybody else's candle blows. Interesting. But more than that, when I'm diving, I'm teaching quite a lot of the time, and so I'll be telling people to do the candle blows. I demonstrate the candle blows, and you know, if I might need to go underwater just for, you know, to a meter or something to tweak somebody's, you know, tense elbow or something, and so I'll be doing candle blows all the time and not really diving. But when I really dive, I do my candle blows, and the instructors or the seniors or people I dive with regularly know what my candle blows are, and therefore they look around and go, oh, Marcus is doing a real dive. He's not just going down to, you know, move somebody's head position or something. He's actually going to do a dive. So I'm actually communicating, so number one, very effectively, non-verbally, to the seniors or, you know, my regular dive buddies by doing my candle blows. And it's interesting, if I do my candle blows, 2 or 3 of the seniors will look over and, oh, Marcus is doing a dive. Who's his buddy? Oh, it's okay. He's with Kiri, or he's with whoever it is. Okay. So number 1 and number 2, even though my candle blows are slightly different, they still have the same 2 communications. Obviously, they still clear out stale air, reduce alveolic CO2 levels, still assisted circulation, and still raise my heart rate artificially before the dive. So exactly the same, but slightly different. That's how powerful it is. When I do my candle blows, as opposed to the normal 3 candle blows, or the standard 3 candle blows, I can feel my body changing. When I do the 3, my body just ignores it. Now, some people have said this is me choosing, okay, I'm now going to do my proper candle blows or my special candle blows, and the fact that I'm choosing it is what triggers the dive response in me. Well, that may be true, but it doesn't matter because the effect is still the same. I've looked at the situation, gone, okay, right, I'm doing a proper dive. I need to do a proper dive here, whether I'm filming or whatever I'm doing, or deep safety, whatever it is. I've made that decision to do my proper candle blows or my different candle blows, and therefore they work. Job done. So I hope that answers a few questions. Sorry? There's some comments. Okay, let's have a look. Oh yes, so, sorry, I didn't see the comments, I'll cover it over. So, Ted, hey, joined late. Will you be doing candle blows during this live stream? It's been a while since your last candle blow stream. Yeah, okay, so everybody's candle blows are slightly different. They've got to be deep enough. Now, if I'm teaching duck dives, your breath hold's going to be like 10 seconds, okay? But it's still important to do the candle blows. But you don't need to clear out stale air and all that, because you're only going to do like 10-second breath hold. So if you see a NoTanx session, you'll see, I'll just, okay guys, we're going to do duck dives. They look like this. And I do the dive. It like still communicates, I'm going to do it, but tiny, tiny, tiny. They're not really candle blows. So if you've seen people do that, they're not really doing candle blows. They've got to be deep enough to clear out the lungs. So they're probably going to be something in the order of no chest movement. Let me stand up so you can see the awesome t-shirt, and let's get turned sideways. Okay, engaging the abdominals, squeezing. Okay, so it's not so much on the chest. Then the last breath in, and then the dive. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so Ted's order question. Is the quick drop off tied to the neurological hooks as well? Possibly, quite possibly. It's what we want it to do, and as obviously, if you're diving in the NT style, using the NT style, the last time you did that similar dive, you enjoyed it. Your body goes, oh yeah, he enjoyed it. That's what he wants me to do, and it will do it again. As soon as you start getting stressed in the dives, then the body goes, okay, well I've got to prepare for stress and stuff, which is why you don't want to. The enjoyment has to be up there in there because it links in with the neurological hooks, positive conditional hooks, neurological programming. So thanks very much for joining us, and it's a bank holiday in the UK next week, and I might be in Wales diving, but I will try and get to somewhere where I've got decent connection and try and do a live stream on the road. Okay, that's what I'm going to try and do. So hopefully see you next week. If not, definitely see you the week after. Please, if you're in the area, come down, join in the pool sessions, and yeah, thank you very much.